Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Toffee Blues podcast. Actually, the Toffee Blues show, actually. Sorry. Hello, welcome back to Toffee Blues, your source for all things Everton. I'm James Pendleton. I'm joined today by Mike from the Unholy Trinity Podcast. And today we're going to be looking ahead to Brentford. Firstly, Mike, how are you doing today?
Not too bad, mate. Not too bad. Yeah, the weekend's fast approaching, so the nerves and the dread is now back in the stomach for the weekend. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely no doubt there. I've got an engagement party straight after it, and most people, or a good chunk of people going, are Everton fans. So the mood could very much swing one way or the other. Obviously, hopefully, if we get ourselves a big win or a big result, we'll all be quite happy. But yeah, I mean, it's an interesting game this really because we haven't won at Brentford's stadium yet. Obviously, we uh, got beat in a really bad Benitez game the season before last. We got beat 1-0, I think. Then last season we were winning for probably about an hour for 50 minutes, something like that. And we ended up conceding late on. Another game, I think we probably should have won, and Damari Gray had a really good chance. And then if you go back even further, just thinking, I know it's a new stadium, but obviously Brentford beat us in I think it was the League Cup, wasn't it? About 2010 or something on penalties, or did they win late in the game? I can't remember, but we lost away at Brentford anyway. So certainly two of the last three times, and we drew last season. So how are you feeling going into the game?
Difficult game, isn't it? Of course, they're a good side. The last couple of seasons since they come into the Premier League, they've been a tough nut to crack. Certainly away from home, we've had a little bit better luck at home. So it's one of those games where we're coming up against the side who might not be at full strength. We know that Ivan Toney's a big miss for them, but they've got more very capable attackers anyway. But obviously Rico Henry as well got a bad injury against Newcastle. He's out for the season. That's a big loss for them. So we've got to go there and believe we can get something from the game. I think that if we're being brutally honest, I think anything would be a real bonus. The last this game and obviously the Arsenal game, I think many expected us to get no points. So I think anything is a positive going into two vital, massive home games, obviously against Luton and Bournemouth.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you talk about those games, and I think we're probably most fans would agree we're not going to be Brentford aren't going to be in any sort of relegation trouble. I mean, obviously, you never know, but you'd imagine not. It is interesting because I've looked at their results this season and actually quite realised. So they drew with Spurs on the opening day. Obviously a decent result. You probably suggest now, knowing what we know about Tottenham now, they've looked quite good. Then they beat Fulham 3-0. Fulham had a man sent off. Fulham looked really crap first game of the season against us, so maybe it's not a surprise. And then they drew with Palace, Bournemouth, and then obviously got beat by Newcastle last week. So they're on a pretty poor run as well at the minute. Obviously, Ivan Toney not playing, as you said. That's interesting as well because it's like they basically lost their best player, and because they've been so good, it hasn't really been spoken of in that same way. Like if a lot of other players lost their main, a lot of other teams, sorry, lost their main striker. Certainly, someone like Brentford, who's only been in the Premier League for two seasons, you'd think, oh well, they're knackered. But because Brentford have been so good, I hadn't really even considered it. But I think talk about us needing to get a result. Because I think if we don't get a result, we'll be disappointed. If we get a point or even a win, that would be a nice stepping stone going into those games. Well, I don't know. I just think looking at their form as well, I think we should have nothing to fear really going into the weekend. I don't know if I'm being a bit naive or not, but that's kind of how I'm seeing it.
No, there's not should be nothing to fear. Heading going to a lot of places in the Premier League, and I think at the moment Everton are probably quite keen to get away from Goodison Park. We know what our record's been like in recent times at Goodison. It's not the fortress that it once was. Hasn't been that way for a number of years now, and teams don't seem to mind coming to our place. So I think the pressure of the fans of Goodison take that away, go away from home, and try and get a result. And I think, it's not going to be like the Arsenal game where we give up, 75, 80% of the possession and say try and break us down. Everton will be a little bit more expansive. I don't mean, by the way, we're going to be playing free flowing open football, but I think if, we always go back to that blueprint of Brighton away. And I'd say Brighton are a better side than Brentford, by the way, especially at home. But I think that is the blueprint with this Everton side to go there. Yes, be difficult to beat, but you've got to have something about you when it comes to getting your moments in attack, whether that be what we were doing against Brighton on the counter attack, and we were absolutely ruthless, obviously, every single time we countered, or simply getting your corners and free kicks and doing something with them. I mean, that was such a poor part of our game against Arsenal when you've got Ashley Young, who's been poor, I think, since he come in, especially from set pieces. But we insisted on keeping him on set pieces. When Dwight McNeil's back on the pitch, probably our technically our best set piece taker, and the mind is not saying do something a little bit different. Chop and change. Changing the angle, changing obviously the foot. We go from right to left. So there's little things like that where when you get your moments, you've got to be effective, and that was a disappointing thing against Arsenal. Yes, they're a good side, but Everton were just totally toothless in attack. But I think going there, we can be a little bit or play a little bit freer against not obviously as good a side as Arsenal, with having obviously now options in terms of Beto, Calvert-Lewin, obviously McNeil's back, Harrison's close. I know the manager said he's not good to start, but I think I'd be surprised if we don't see him on the bench come Saturday evening. There's options there now in attack, so we've got to now utilise that and play to our strengths as well. If you've got two big lads up front, potentially, then let's play to our strengths. And I think we've just got to try and just shake off the start of the season as best we can, because with the best will in the world, we know how important the next two home games are. And I think if you can go into the Luton game on the back of a point or even 3 points, God forbid Everton win a game of football, it takes a little bit of pressure away on those home games and obviously off the manager as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think you mentioned the Brighton game right at the start, and that is obviously the kind of blueprint or the game we'd love to see every week, or even you get a game like that once a season or something. Most teams do get a big away win, maybe not quite as big or against as good an opposition, but I mean, I don't think Brighton are a better side, as you mentioned then, but I think, I don't know, I see similarities between the two, and I think while obviously Brentford are a bit more kind of a bit more rough and tumble, a bit more pragmatic, I think it's a kind of game that I think could suit us, and what I don't want to see is giving up the ball and sitting back. So I don't think we're going to need to. I think we can actually have a little bit more about us going forward. As I say, Frank Lampard took us there last season and, coached a decent performance, and it was only, I think it was like an 85th minute goal when they equalised, if I remember correctly. But absolutely going into those next two home games, if we can get anything on Saturday, would be great. A win would be fantastic. You've got all this stuff rumbling on in the background, all the 777 stuff, all the ownership nonsense, all the talk of loans and the money. It's awful to think about. So getting someone to celebrate on the pitch is paramount on Saturday. You mentioned Jack Harrison there. Obviously, he isn't going to be starting the game, you'd think, which is obviously a shame, but we knew when we signed him he was injured. We needed another right midfielder for my money once we sold Alex Iwobi, so he's not going to be playing again there. What do you think the team's going to be then in terms of personnel? Because you'd imagine this Dominic Calvert-Lewin Beto partnership is going to come sooner rather than later. Would you like to see that on Saturday, especially if they're going to play three centre-backs?
I think so. I mean, obviously, when you go against a side that plays three centre halves, we've seen it too many times, haven't we? Where we left our centre forward totally isolated against three centre halves. I'd like to see it. Obviously, I think if we did that, I think if we look at a 5-3-2, and he'd look to probably play McNeil as a left wing back and potentially Garner as a right wing back, maybe. We know he's filled in there at the back end of last season. He looked good doing that, better than obviously playing solely as a right winger. I think defensively he's got something about him. So that's potentially an option, isn't it? To do that. When he was asked about maybe looking at playing two up top, he wasn't averse to it, was he? So that suggests to me maybe that's what he's got in mind. So if that was the case, then you'd be looking at then obviously having three centre halves ourselves, and probably Tarkowski, Branthwaite, and Nolan Dyche you'd bring Keane back into the fold, wouldn't he? With McNeil, Garner. The midfield three is a puzzle at the moment. It's not really working in its current guise. So if we are playing this sort of 4-4-5-1, it doesn't really work for a variety of reasons. In a 5-3-2, would it be better? Maybe, because we've got obviously three centre halves, so you're giving two of them a license to be a bit more further forward, and you need them to be supporting the two centre forwards as well. So maybe he's going to go down that road and obviously have Calvert-Lewin and Beto up top together. but then you're thinking, well, you're taking then Danjuma out of the equation, who, by all accounts, probably been one of our better players. And to be honest, should have really kept his spot on the left wing against Arsenal as opposed to start McNeil over there just because he's come back in fit. So if he goes with a 5-3-2, I think obviously Danjuma might be the one to miss out. You might just start better with Danjuma and then say to Calvert-Lewin, you can come on a little bit later on. But I wouldn't be surprised, as you say, if they're going to play three at the back, that we will see two up top to try and counteract that in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think Brentford are obviously very good at what they do. They mix things up a little bit as well. As you mentioned, if you had injury issues, and someone like Danjuma could also be crucial because obviously with no Rico Henry, I think I was reading some Brentford fans talk and looks like it might be Hickey moving over to the left, which is where he is more comfortable. But then I think it's Russell coming in at wing back, who isn't hasn't gotten loads of Premier League minutes since they've come up. So that could be an interesting one, and maybe that might mean he does keep Danjuma in, could play him as a bit more of a wide strike and then get up a bit closer to Beto. But I wasn't at the game on Sunday. I was listening to it on the radio, which was a chastening experience.
Look at you.
Yeah, well, so I thought, but then I'm listening to it and it's just we didn't touch the ball for like minutes at a time, and every time it's like Pickford will take the goal kick here, and they don't say anything for 10 seconds, and then Gabriel's got it, and it's like, oh, it was horrible. But what I did watch when I got back and watched a sort of extended highlights thing of it, Beto was just so isolated, and in big games like that against big opposition, he knows that's going to happen. He's just come from Udinese in Serie A, where I'm sure he had games like that against the bigger sides. But that's the one thing for me I don't want to see on Sunday, regardless of who plays with him. He can't get that isolated, because I just don't think he's not going to be able to pull anything off if he's doing that. If he's got a bit of help with him, I think he could be a real asset. But that's the big thing for me, is that no matter who plays, we get at least a body or two around him at all times.
Yeah, you're totally spot on. We can't go into games and have no attacking threat, because then it's not a contest. And the Arsenal game wasn't a contest defensively. Everton were all right, and you could argue for 69 minutes we did exactly what we set out to do, and that was frustrating and be difficult to break down. And from a defensive perspective, it was a good performance. But like I say, everything we did so well against them when we played them in Sean Dyche's first game, we didn't do at all when we played them last weekend. We just playing with a little bit of intensity, pressing in the right areas with a bit of intensity, hunting in, impacts at times. When we were getting set pieces in around the area, the delivery was good. Because obviously we scored from a set piece against them last season, but also we had chances in that first half against them to also score from a set piece, and we caused them problems. So the only real difference between their side last season and this season was Declan Rice, and I just think Everton afforded him far too much respect and far too much space. And even when we went 1-0 down and we had two up front, even when we put sort of a semi-press on to their back line, Declan Rice was left in acres of space, so that press didn't come in ways. It was the odd player here and there. So Everton have got to be an attacking threat. We've got to, as you say, get support of Beto, because it's a waste of time. We know he's a big lad, but he can't do it all on his own. And I felt for him massively when, as you say, he was so isolated, he just couldn't get into the game. Little bits here and there, but he just obviously, I don't even think he got a shot off all game either, because we just didn't get in and around the area to create anything at all. So Everton have got to be much better. We can't afford to be this or that pragmatic against a Brentford side, and certainly against Luton and Bournemouth. We've got to pose some kind of threat, or the best that you can hope for is a 0-0, and we can't go through the whole season doing that. But the hope I've got is that we've seen the games against Fulham and Wolves, and as much as we didn't score, Everton were much a better side in both those games, and should have easily scored 2 or 3 in both as well. So the chances were being created, but the personnel on the pitch weren't good enough to put the ball in the back of the net. So hopefully, with players returning from injury, with obviously Beto coming in as well, we should pose more of an attacking threat and have players on the pitch who are capable of putting the ball in the back of the net.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking about those two home games are just awful. Particularly the Wolves one, I think, are probably the most, but they're both awful. And their points we should have on the board now. We'd obviously be, if we had 6 points, 4 points, 3 points, whatever, we'd be much more confident going into a game like this. I mean, I think the last kind of thing I wanted to talk about tactically was, again, talking about Beto. I mean, you go back to the Sheffield United game where I think I don't know if it's still got the record for this season, but he made the most dribbles of any player in the Premier League. I don't know if that's changed from last week. I didn't see it pop up anywhere, but I think he made 7 dribbles. If I had to guess, I'd say maybe he made 1 or 2 on Sunday. So it does show, and again, they play 3 at the back as well. We had players getting up towards him, Decore, Danjuma. That made a big difference there. I just think, again, if they're going to play this 3-5-2, as you mentioned, or 3-2-1-2, 3-2-3, whatever you want to call it. Sorry, 5-2-3, whatever you want to call it. Getting plays up to him is crucial, as we mentioned, but I do wonder who's going to go in behind him, because that midfield three, as you mentioned, that Onana, Gay, Decore, I'm not sure how well it's working for us. Decore scored a massive goal for us last season, made a big difference, obviously, for what happens afterwards. But so far this season, have been massively impressed. Amadou Onana's kind of blowing hot and cold, just kind of Gage having to do all the work himself. Where do you stand on that midfield? Would you maybe bring James Garner in? Would you shift a player out and you get an extra wide man or an extra striker? Or just stick with that three again for the weekend?
I think it's always a concern when Everton go with 2 midfield, because we get past 3 when we've got 3 in midfield, never mind 2. So that would be a concern, because we don't execute correctly with a midfield. So I think I'd like to see James Garner given the chance to play in the position that he wants to play in, and there's no reason why you couldn't play him as the sort of the top of that triangle. And this is no slight on Decore, and I like Decore. I think he's very inconsistent. I think his touch isn't great. Scored a massively important goal for us last season. But James Garner technically is a very, very good footballer. So if you can get him in and around the area, he'll let a shot go. He'll bring other players in, and he needs to be given a chance to play where his preferred position is. He's done a lot of work for us and helped us out at right back, at right wing back, as a right winger, and with the best will in the world, he's none of those 3. So we need to play him where he should be playing. Maybe that's an option for the manager. Maybe he makes a change. I know just like James Garner, and obviously his attitude is spot on, because he's doing what is asked of him. But I do think we should be looking to bring him in, because that midfield 3 certainly isn't functioning correctly. And they're a little bit, as you said, they're hit and miss. The Onana, I think, has looked good at times this season. I think, I didn't think on Sunday's performance was good at all. His passing was really off, and I'm a big fan of his, by the way. I think he's going to go on to be a really good footballer, but I just think at times I can see why people do jump on him a little bit and think he plays within himself, because at times you want him just to go with the ball, just drive forward. Big long legs. He can cover the ground quickly. He's big. He's strong. He's powerful. And we don't see enough of that for me from him, and that's what I want to be seeing. We know he's good in the tackle. We know we can break up play. When you do that, though, get someone to drop him behind him and let him go into the space if it's available. And that's always a little bit of a bugbear, I think, since he's come in. But we've got to remember he's a young kid who came from a slower league, and he's only played really a handful of first team games. Let's get it right. We've got to understand that. But I think James Garner naturally will be chomping at the bit to try and get in the middle of that midfield. Great energy, great work ethic, and I think in the middle there he may make more of a difference to our performance.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think with Garner, it was Garner who played in a lot of the really important games towards the back end of last season. Onana wasn't in the side as much. Garner then played obviously a wing back when we had our end of season injury, just attack on the side, and it really wasn't good. But he stepped up to be counted, and he's shown that I think we'll certainly get some minutes this season. And I'd be interested to see where he plays him in on the weekend. But just rounding off then, Mike, I mean, what would you say? What's your prediction for the score on Saturday? Because I think I do think we need a result here, whether that be a draw or a win, even just to calm everyone down a little bit, get another point on the board. Obviously, I'm not saying anything should or shouldn't happen after the game or anything like that. Certainly not. But I just think it'd be really good for the team going into those 2 big important games. So what would be your score prediction?
I think I said the other day, I think 1-1 is probably me being positive. There's no reason why we can't get something from the game. As I said, going into these kind of games with fear is no good. We're not going to Man City. We're not going away to Arsenal. We're not going to Anfield where we're horrendous. We're going to Brentford, and with the best will in the world. They're a good, solid Premier League side. Massively impressed by them since they've come up. Definitely the manager is a terrific manager. They've recruited well, like you said earlier on in the show. Ivan Toney's missing, and you wouldn't really know it in terms of the performances. They've done pretty well. So, it's a difficult place to go, of course, but no reason why, even given our start of the season, why we can't go there and at least get a point. So I think we can get a 1-1 draw, to be honest.
Yeah, funny enough, 1-1 was the result I went for. Been a low scoring fixture since they've come back up, as I mentioned. And yeah, I just think with where we're at the minute, confidence is low, pressure's high. But two hugely winnable games, particularly obviously the Luton one's a game you don't want to be dropping any points in. So get away with something on Saturday and get back and win that game. And then obviously you go on to, is it Bournemouth after that, I believe. So a few 3 games here where Everton got to be targeting a minimum 7 points as far as I'm concerned. And I think a 1-1 draw on Saturday would be a good start as long as we follow through on those home games. But anyway, nice one for that, Mike from the Unholy Trinity Podcast. Really appreciate that. Let us know what your thoughts down below of the scoreline, who do you want to see playing, and your general thoughts on what's going on at Everton at the minute, because it's never ever dull. So nice one for that, and we'll speak to you next time. Thank you.